Welcome to MH News, everybody. I'm your host, Matt Haslam. As always, this is Q&A Mondays, so if you'd like your question read on the show in future episodes, please email us at questions@mhnews.info, which is our brand new website for the show, and check out our new schedule, which includes every Monday a Q&A episode, every Tuesday a mini topic episode, and every Thursday a main topic episode where we go into how-to and stuff like that. So subscribe to our channel to check out all of that goodness. So our first question today comes in from Justin Illusion Deafener. That's a really cool middle name. I just have to pause and say that's a really freaking cool middle name. If that's not your real middle name, go down to the courthouse right now, change your middle name, come back and watch the rest of this program. That's an awesome middle name, dude. Like, especially if you're an effect guy. So, his question is, how would I go about an effect where I touch an object and the color drains out from the object to my finger, leaving a black and white object? Well, I'm going to use an example here. For instance, if I'm still in production on that, the shoot, what I would do is I would actually do a practical effect, and I would pick an object, whether it be big or small. This is just an example of like a pen or something like that. I would pick like a very vibrant color pen, such as like a rainbow color pen or something like that, and I'll shoot that scene where my hand comes in, touches the object, and then goes out of frame and stuff like that. And then I will take the same scene without my hand in the frame, and I'll shoot it in color, which I'll end up putting in black and white later, but just a B-roll shot almost of that object alone without any movement in it, and almost like a still image in black and white. And then I'll have that for later, which we'll talk about in just a second, or I'll switch out the actual object with like a black pen or something like that, which is the absence of color, or I'll paint the object itself if I'm able to do that, to a black color, which is, again, the absence of color. So then what I'll do in post later on is I'll put the black and white image of that object underneath and on the first layer, and then on the second layer I'll put the color video of my hand coming in and touching the object and going back out again. And then what I'll do is I'll mask out the object and around my finger, so that way you can see the object, and it's almost like you're creating like a peephole in the color image to see the black and white image. And I'll mask around my object and fade it in, not so much in a circle, like I wouldn't fade it in as a circle so that the color comes, disappears as a circle towards your finger. What I would do is I would make the masking on the outside border sort of like a paint drop effect. And a great example of this is in a music video by Jamie Johnson called In Color. Whether you like his music or not, it's a great example of this. I personally like his music, but you don't have to like it, you just have to know the effect that's being used. He's putting color into the image, whereas you're taking out of it, but it's still the same effect being used with like paint drop effect. So check that out, the link in the description for that video as well. But that's how I would do it, and basically you would just have two layers there. Next question comes from Nick McCann. Any tips on writing a feature-length script without writing practice in a class and the likes? Really, if I had grammar like that, I would probably advise getting a class or two, because you probably want to learn grammar if you want to do a movie, but just saying. Anyway, really, a lot of the same tips on writing a feature-length script are the same tips I would give on being an author or a songwriter. You have to tell a good story, and you have to keep people entertained throughout the entire story. Don't leave any gaps out, and always keep them come back for more. Maybe give them like a moment where they think something's going to happen, then don't actually have it happen, and then do that a couple times where they think certainly this is going to happen next, and then you're like, no, that's not going to happen next, and then all of a sudden you give a big punch at the end of, wow, that really did happen. So soon enough they'll start to not expect what they're expecting, and then boom, it happens. But we did a whole episode on songwriting tips. I know it's not filmmaking, but a lot of the same techniques can be applied to feature-length scripts. So there's a link in the description to our episode last week on songwriting tips, so check that out. Next question comes from Gestape David Abba, and I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name right, but oh my gosh, like I have to pause here and say, like, y'all have really cool names. I'm just saying, like, you know, really cool. Like Illusion, definitely, and now Gestape. Like, I want a name like that. I like Matt Haslam, but that's just cool. Anyway, is it better to film in black and white or to film in color and then convert to black and white in post? Well, I would say always film in color. That's generally what's done nowadays. I know back in the day when they shot on film, they had to shoot in black and white because, you know, they didn't have color back in the day, and then they went to just shooting in color. But whenever they wanted it in black and white, you had to shoot in black and white because you didn't have too much effects in post to do. So what I would do is I would shoot in color. What we have to remember here is when you're shooting in black and white, your darks are going to be darker. And basically, when you take it into black and white later in post, you have to remember that the blacks are going to get darker, the lights are going to get lighter. So you have to prepare yourself for that. So what I would generally do is I would set up my camera, get it all ready, and get all my lighting the way that I want it. Then I would take my camera and go to the feature of black and white on the camera. Then I would look over my image, make sure it's exactly how I want it. I would run through the scene, or whatever I'm doing, make sure the light is acting how I want it to, maybe adjust my lights so that it looks correct for me, so I don't have a lot of work in post to do, and then I'll go back to the color feature, shoot the entire scene, and then in post, take it to black and white, and I shouldn't have that much work to do. But if you already shot in black and white, it's going to be pretty hard to take it into color. I've had this happen to me before, where a client at the very beginning of the project said to me, you know, I want to have this project in black and white. Was very adamant about black and white Final Cut. Then shot it in color because I knew I was going to take it to black and white in post. But I shot it in color anyway. Then edited in color. Then exported finally in black and white at the very end. And he said to me, when I showed him the Final Cut, he said to me, you know, let me just see the color and see, you know, how much of a difference it really makes, you know. And so I showed him the color, and he ended up loving the color a lot more. So we ended up exporting and putting it out there in color. So just because someone says to you they're going to shoot it in black and white doesn't mean you're going to end up using black and white. So always shoot in color. It's just, I mean, black and white in post is the same quality. I mean, nowadays the effects are so great in post that you really don't need to do much at all in practical on the actual camera. So that's what I would do, and that's generally what's done nowadays. Next question from Daniel Kahn. How to deal with no friends having to help you in filmmaking. I actually deal with this a lot. On a lot of the smaller budget projects we do or something like that, there'll be no one at the camera, and there's no cameramen, there's no directors, there's no editing guys, it's all me. So generally what I'll do is there's two things I want to cover here, actually three things. First off is I've seen a lot of people online who say, you know, I can't film today because I don't have any friends to help me as a cameraman, I don't have any family members who are willing to be actors, I don't have this, I don't have that, or I don't have a piece of gear, I don't have this camera yet, you know, I won't have this camera for another week yet, so I can't film today. Bull crap, okay? Go out there and film. Don't use it as an excuse. Don't use it as a crutch. It is not a crutch. Go out there and film, okay? Second thing I want to cover as far as this topic goes is you could do two things. Basically, you can just set up your tripod. If you're the one in front of the camera as your actor, I would set up my camera, then just a static shot, camera's not moving. Then later on in post-production, I would add a movement template to it in certain scenes just to make it look like the camera was moving, even though it wasn't. So I'll maybe shoot a little bit wider than I want the scene to be, and then I'll be able to add an effect later on in post in anything like Magix Video Pro X4 or anything of that caliber or better. There's movement templates that you can add to your images, so I'll make it look like the camera was on a slider, or make it look like the camera was zooming in or zooming out or something, some sort of variation, panning up, panning down. There's all different types of movements you can add, and then I'll add that in post to make it look like my camera was moving even if it wasn't. So just because you don't have a cameraman doesn't mean you can't get a moving shot either. third thing I'm going to cover is you could also just reach out to some people. I mean, just because you don't have anybody to help you doesn't mean you can't shoot alone. Go to a state park. Go to a local event that's happening. Go to a sporting event that's by your local high school or something like that, and shoot that. If you're under 30 years old like I am, you can use the excuse, well, I'm just a student photographer, just shooting this as a class project or something like that. There's plenty of stuff that you can do that doesn't require a lot of actors or something like that, and you can still legally capture those images. Go out into a town or something like that and get a bunch of like B-roll stuff as if you're doing a documentary or something like that, documentary style. So find a couple really cool buildings at a town nearby. If it's a day off for us, I'll go out to a different town around where we live here. Or there was one time I went out to Indiantown Gap National Cemetery, which is about an hour away from where we are, a state park or something like that, which is about an hour away. I'll actually plan trips out in advance. So if I have a day off coming up or something like that from work, what I'll do is I already have a list of places. So maybe if I'm traveling an hour to get there, I'll pick out two or three locations nearby that I can go to all on my own, get a bunch of like B-roll type shots. And what's really cool about that is because you can offer that to newer customers. For instance, the Indiantown Gap, the next week after we shot that, we had no idea it was going to come up, but a client came in, wanted to showcase a couple Army scenes, and just so happened I shot a National Guard base the week prior at Indiantown Gap. So what was really cool about that is because I had that B-roll all ready for that client and ended up using that in the end final cut. So just go out there and shoot. Doesn't matter what you're shooting. And please do not use this as an excuse or a crutch. Last question of the day comes in from Alex Frappin. How do you avoid audio cuts when shooting a conversation with straight-on angles at the character? Great video on this. It comes in from DSLR Guide by host Simon Cade. He does a great job at explaining this, and I'll put a link in the description for that video. But basically what it is in condensed version is what you want to do is you want to have your main camera. If you only have one camera on set that day, let's just go over that first. What I would do is I would shoot the entire scene, and then later on I would look for certain words, and if the actor had to restate a certain line or something like that, I would look for the same exact word that they said twice, and I would cut during that word. What many people don't know is cuts actually happen inside of words. So people generally look for cuts between sentences or between words. But generally, if you say the word, let's just say for instance, I said the word spotlight, and then a minute later I messed up the line and I restated the entire line again and I said spotlight again, what I'll do is I'll have from the first take the half of the word spot, and then I'll fade out, and then I'll fade in just in time to have the light part of the word from the second time I said that word. And if you fade it correctly, you'll be able to have the audience be none the wiser. You actually cut in between that word, so it'll sound like I'm saying spotlight, only it's cut right in between that word. If I had multiple cameras on set that day, I would cut the audio as I'm cutting the camera angle to another camera angle. But generally what happens in anytime you cut audio, you want to cut your video as well. So a great way to do that is to take a second camera that day, or even if it's the same, if you only have one camera, just after your interview is over, something like that, take your camera, put it behind your actor, and that way you can't see their mouth moving, but just take a couple B-roll shots of them subtly moving their shoulders or something like that, as if they're talking to the camera in front of them, but just take some B-roll shots like that, and then you'll be able to put that over top of your cut. That way it looks like you just cut to a different camera angle, even though you never did cut to a even though you cut to a different scene, it looks like you had two cameras on set that day. It looks really professional, and you hide that cut, because remember, when you cut your audio, you're going to be also cutting the video, and it's going to look like a jump cut, so you want to hide that by something. Also, if you're doing if the actor's talking about an object or something like that, if they're talking about a town nearby, maybe I'll cut to B-roll shot of a building that is in that town that they're talking about at a certain time. For instance, if I'm talking about a certain computer, maybe specs on a computer, I'll cut to a scene of that computer or something like that. So you'll want to have something over top of that cut just to hide it. So that's how you cut. If you'd like to have your question read on the show, please email us at questions@mhnews.info, and please like and subscribe to our channel for plenty of great content to come. Remember, our episodes come out every Monday with Q&As, every Tuesday with mini topic episodes, and every Thursday with main topic episodes. So come back for more, and thanks for watching, and enjoy your day.